All right, guys, thanks for coming out. This is Roof Lines. We're talking about Carnac air barriers, and we have Chris Udick here about to do a demonstration for our good friends at Lone Star Decking and Cladding. So we're here today to watch this demonstration. Go ahead, take it away, Chris.
Here we go. I'm going to be showing you our air barrier products. The two we have here are the what we call our product is 323 Gap Seal FR. This is the sealant that's used to detail all the changes in plane, gaps, flashings, inside outside corners, around pipes, penetrations, doors, windows, all that kind of sealing first to make our air barrier system continuous. Once this has been on and applied, then we will put the Carnac 321 Seal VP on. This is our air barrier coating. You get a chance to take a look and see it. So here we have our exterior system here, plywood in this case. The Gap.
A very nice mock-up built by you guys. I do have to add, thank you very much for allowing us to do it on here. This also comes in caulking, so you can get it in that as well, or with a bolt caulk gun to use with the
Gap Seal FR is sold in 3.5 gallon buckets, what we have right here. Usually when you open up a bucket, there may be a little bit of material on top. You can mix in with a brush, or I have a 5 gallon mixing stick here. Mixes in very easily. As you can see, it's a very light trowel, brush applied material. Usually a brush, something like this 4-inch chip brush is how you're going to apply it. Easy to work with. It's maroon in color. It is fire rated. This is all part of Carnac's NFPA 285 fire rated air barrier system. So we have a nice Carnac red on there. Set this off to the side here. This is going to be our sealant here, maroon in color. I'll get my brush in here to do it. We're going to use this, as I mentioned, to seal any gaps and changes in plane. So what I'm going to show here first is I'll show it on the window. We have a nice window rough opening here. So with that, I have my 31 fiberglass membrane. You're going to use fiberglass membrane with this system and product.
Fiberglass because it doesn't burn. Also, whenever we come up to a gap, we're going to apply it also. Any type of angle change, we're going to apply that also. It is an acrylic, so it doesn't really smell at all. It doesn't taste very good though, so you don't want to be doing that. So how thick are you applying that, Chris?
So what I'm doing here is I'm using 6-inch wide fabric because I want 3 inches on the exterior side. I want 3 inches on the interior here of the window around the opening there. I'm applying the sealant roughly in a 3-inch width, 3 to 4 inch width at about a 1/16 of an inch thickness. Now, you can either brush this out and check it with a mill gauge. That's very easy to do. I kind of know that the coverage rate is right there with it. So I'm going to take my fabric, just line it up to make sure I got the right size here. Put a little at the top.
So you're applying this, but you're not allowing it to actually dry. You want to put it in wet. You're actually doing a 3-course method.
That is correct, Jay. I'm going to be basically taking my opening here and sealing around it and doing what is referred to a lot of times in the industry as a 3-course. So I got on the exterior side now. The fabric is going to wrap around the inside. So I want to make sure I get my inside of my window as well.
How important is it to cover every square inch of that, the wood substrate that we have right now, but if we had Den's glass gold, how important is it to get a very good, even surface without any break in the actual system?
It's really this step right here in doing this work is really the most important aspect of your air barrier system, because for it to be a true air barrier system and to function correctly, it's got to be continuous. So all your detail work is really important. So I'll line up my fabric here and I can set it in place, kind of brush it applied. Once I have it kind of set, I'm going to cover this up again. But once I have it set, it's then easy for me to come back and take some scissors there and kind of make a cut.
So this is an air barrier that you're putting on, and the rest of the product that we're going to be installing you can either brush it or you know, roll it on, or you can spray it. This is not a step where you want to be spraying it on, because you really want these are the details right here that you're going to be doing first and foremost.
Yeah, the 323 really, when you're doing the fabric and the 3-course, you're going to be actually doing it as a brush technique. You're going to be brushing it on. That's the fastest and easiest way to get the work done.
And this is any penetration that you come to. If it's a pipe boot, I mean a pipe boot, pipe flashing, PVC pipe coming through the wall, any other types of protrusions in the wall. This is the method that we're going to use right here. Is that correct?
That is correct. That is correct. Really, anything, any changes in plane, so pipe penetration, a rough opening cut, or any pipe, or any time we have a gap that is between 1/4 inch wide and 1/2 inch, we're going to do a 3-course on it.
Okay, so 1/4 inch wide, 1/2 inch wide. When do we have to put the membrane actually in that in that gap? I mean, do we always have to put the membrane on top of the gap, or?
No, only if this gap is 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch do we use fabric. If it's less than 1/4 inch, like this gap we see right here, this gap we see right here, we can take our sealant and we can brush the sealant in along it to make sure it's continuous. You know, for something like this, I could use a smaller brush, or I could use the material, you know, the 4-inch brush I'm using right now. We want to make that, we're going to seal that up so that joint is taken care of. And really just, you know, sealing it as in the manner I did right there is going to seal that up. We want to make sure we do a little quality control, that we have that completely sealed.
Now, what would happen if this was too big of a gap and we applied this, and what happens then after we've done the coating? How can you tell that gap is too big after you've already coated it?
Well, once everything dries, if you've come back to do some quality control and you see maybe the gap got a little too wide, it wasn't quite plumb. A lot of times the material, if it's over 1/4 inch, the material could be pushed back in, so it could be missing. It looked like the material is not there because it's fallen into the crack. Or the material was applied so thick, because it was greater than a 1/4 inch or greater, that it actually dried and it mud cracked on you. In either case, it's easy to fix. If it's big enough that it's fallen back in, I would suggest taking some spray foam, and you could fill that crack with foam, allow that foam to dry, and then shave it off even with the roof.
Okay.
Or you could push a backer rod in there to fill that space if it was bigger. Or if it was simply, you could also just brush some material in there. If it looks like the material is just kind of cracked, but still kind of filling that gap, giving you something positive to kind of push up against, and it's dried, you could take the material itself and just brush it back in there, covering that slot, that crack that actually developed, and to cover it up and be sealed then.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, cool.
So what I did here with the fabric, I would just continue this around the window.
How much of an overlap do you want the top and the bottom right there?
You want to see 3 inches. That's
3
why it's good that, using 6-inch wide fabric. It's easy to put it right in the middle of the fabric and get 3 inches.
So do you want to go 3 inches this way as well?
Yeah,
to overlap?
You want a picture frame of 3 inches all the way around the perimeter.
Okay.
And all the way on the interior side.
So that would be in the corners as well, and inside corners and the outside corners as well? All of that the same?
Correct. You'll use a 6-inch fabric here, 3 inches on each side, and sealant, three-coursed. Same for the interior corner as well.
Okay.
Okay. For for pipes and penetrations, it's easy to take the fabric in the application, and sometimes when you take the fabric, you go around your penetration. Make sure I go around the penetration, make sure I have a little bit of an overlap here where I got at least 1 inch overlap, and then I will take my scissors and I will cut fingers halfway through. And I will do that for my fabric. This allows the fabric to contour around the pipe, but then also flare out onto the substrate. So if there's any kind of a pipe, I don't have a pipe, but
I got a pipe right here.
But you kind of see the idea. You kind of see the idea here. The fabric flares out around it.
Here we go. Pipe boot.
So, yeah, so if that was my pipe boot, then I'm gonna detail that around it. It's a little bigger than what I want, so I would cut some of the sides, cut some of the excess off. But you get the idea. Flashes around there, it keeps a nice transition. The other thing you come across a lot of times on these walls, is you deal with the rough openings where you 3-course. We dealt with a seam that was less than 1/4 of an inch. We just used the sealant by itself. We come across screws, and you're going to see a lot of screws. This is just a mock-up, so we just have a couple of screws shown here. But the screw heads, you're just going to put a dollop on each one. So generally, a 1-inch or a 2-inch brush is easier to do that with than a 4-inch. I can do it, but you're just going to take those screws there, and you're going to dollop them up to kind of cover them up there. That way, that screw is nice and sealed there.
So I know whenever we're doing coatings on metal roofs, we're looking for a Hershey's Kiss that actually sticks up. Are you looking for it to stick up very much, or does it just need to be, how thick does that need to be over the screw?
Yeah, really just a 1/16 of an inch. So it doesn't need to be a Hershey Kiss like on the roofing side of it. When you're doing things, we just want to see that screw head covered up with sealant, which is what we've done here.
Okay. Some mount on that penetration. Okay, you're not going to want to apply it
That's
any
good. It gives you
heavier
a good
than that
idea.
because it'll get more difficult.
I don't want to unspeak it all
to
over
apply
yourself. But yeah, you get an idea how it feels.
Yeah.
It stays on your brush. It's easy to use, and
How about temperature?
Temperature, it's water-based, so application's got to be 40 and rising. Make sure that if you put it on, it dries. It's going to skin over in a couple hours, but you want to let it sit for 24 hours before you put the actual air barrier coating over top of it there. That's
24 hours?
24 hours, and that's really so that you're not rolling and you're taking off what you put on if it's too wet. If I try on now, my roller is going to try to pull off what's here because it hasn't really set up. So just give it 24 hours.
Now, what about rain? If there's rain in the forecast and we know that we're going to try to get this done in the morning, how much of a window of time do we need before it rains on it and doesn't wash it down into the parking lot?
You give this 6 hours and it's a light rain resistant in 6 hours. You want to plan plan it so that ideally, best practice, 24 hours of dry weather. So I check and I don't have rain. But, occasionally you get that stuff sometimes. It's been on, you get a little flash cloud come by and you get a little rain in some part of the county you didn't even realize it was going to rain. As long as it's had 6 hours, it's going to set up. If for some reason it got wet, you can reapply it over top of itself, so it's not like it ruined the whole application.
So, but it would in fact have to be recoated?
Yes, yeah. If you came back and it looked like it's ran because it got wet.
Would the fabric need to be reapplied?
If the material is gone and the fabric is kind of floating, then yes, the fabric would need to be. And what I would do is I would just leave the fabric there and just do a 3-course over top of it again.
And you really want to avoid fish mouths. So if you see that it has started to bunch up and now you have fish mouths, you're going to want to cut those fish mouths out, lay it down, and then of course 3-course over the top of it again. The material is very good about accepting more material on top of it if you have to come back and repair.
Yeah, that's a good point. You're doing your quality control and you got just a fish mouth in there. You can take a pair of scissors and go in and you just kind of cut it, press it down, and then just seal over top of it again with some sealant.
Now, do you ever have to stir it again once you've stirred it initially the first time?
Yeah, just when you open this up, if it's been 2 days since you've used it, you open it up. If you see a little bit of liquid on top, just take a stick, the 5-gallon paint stir I showed, and just mix it. Or I could easily take my brush too, and I could just go like this, just to kind of make sure it's all nice and even. Generally, once you've mixed it, it stays easy to use and ready to use right there in the.
You other guys should come and really try to do one of these corners just so that you can feel it. Come on.
Want to try it? I got a small piece of fabric. If you want to, how about we put that right there? So you'll want to spread that there, and about the width of that fabric in there, on both sides. Okay, I'll let you.
All right, so I put this on first, right?
Yep. And don't, put more on there. It'll make it easier for you. There you go. That's a good amount. It'll stay on there, and then you don't have to go back to there as much.
And this is considered an elastomeric, correct, Chris?
It is, correct. This is an elastomeric. And one thing we didn't talk about either is exposure time. This product, the sealant and the coating, can be exposed up to 9 months before the cladding would go on, which is pretty far. There are a lot of other ones in the industry that 6 months is the only open time it can have. All right, looks like you got it buttered up well. We have our 6-inch fabric, and then you can just lay that in there. And what I typically do is I hold it with one hand. I'll take this and just kind of make sure I poke it. I want to get it in that crack so that it fits in there. I do one side first to make sure, and I like to go up and down. I don't go out. If I go out, a lot of times it pulls it out of that crack, and I really want to fit it in there. So
Chris, I know that we have to cut it into manageable lengths to install it, but is there a recommended length that you know of to
and then
put
here
these on the walls?
you can finish up the rest of it there. It really is up to anybody who's using it, what they like. I don't like to go the whole fabric. Usually if I got my windows, rough openings, I'll kind of do that work ahead of time. I can dry fit it without any sealant, see how long I need, cut a piece off for the top, the bottom, and the sides.
Okay.
And if I have 25 of these, I can cut 25 and just go ahead and get it ahead of time. It's going to make it easier when I'm out here working with the material on my hands, much.
Well, what about like a long wall, like that whole corner? I mean, would it be a 10-foot? Would it be a 5-foot?
As far as the whole run goes, I like to work in manageable pieces. So something like that, I'd probably go 4 or 5 feet, cut it. And then if I want to continue it on, just overlap it 2 inches, the fabric. So my next piece, I'll overlap it 2 inches as I continue down, since I cut that fabric.
And would you want to start at the bottom or start at the top or start in the middle? Or does it matter?
I would start at the top and work my way down.
Okay.
Therefore, if I get a little aggressive on too much sealant, it actually, if it runs down, if it starts to flop down off it's going to fall on a wall that I haven't touched at all.
So we're not really concerned about backlapping. We're because water will run down, and most of the time, if you're
Yeah, I'm not concerned with that. It's going to be monolithic and continuous in that sealant, so there's not going to be a seam that water's going to buck up against.
perfect.
So I'm not worried about that. Even when it's hot and you think things are going to evaporate faster, you also have high humidity thrown in there, and that high humidity kind of doesn't allow things to evaporate as quickly because the air is already holding it. So, from a heat standpoint, it gets a little less viscous, but I don't think it's really anything noticeable. But yeah, it may be in the sun, especially if you're doing a wall that's been in the sun. So you're doing like a southeastern corner of the wall where it's been in the sun all day and the material's sitting there. Yeah, it'd be a little less thin, but it'll still easily be worked.
Yeah. I would actually imagine, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the colder the temperature, the thicker it is going to be, and the more you're going to have to sit there and paint it on.
Yeah, my question is,
The
is it
warmer.
more runny? Is it
Yeah.
thinner?
It's not really going to be running.
Yeah, it gets a little thinner, because of the heat, but it's not going to be runny.
Yep. So 3/4 inch nap roller.
Yeah, what I have here, this is the 321 Seal VP. This is the air barrier coating.
You mix this one as well.
Yeah, same thing goes. When you open up a can of this, you want to make sure it's completely mixed. Let me get a stick and so you can kind of see.
Is there a time that you're supposed to? Is it 5 minutes, 10 minutes? How long are you supposed to mix it?
Usually something like this, I'll open it up and it may need 2 minutes if it needs any mixing at all. So really hardly anything.
Okay.
I can mix it with a stick, or I can have a Jiffy mixer and a 1/2-inch drill, and I can mix it that way too and do it quicker. But again, the material itself usually doesn't have any separation to it right now. I've mixed it, so even if it sets, it usually doesn't. Has a nice consistency. You see it's thicker than a paint, but kind of like maybe a light oatmeal consistency to it.
And once again, it is an acrylic, so you don't have like that solvent smell, which is very easy to work with.
No, it's low VOC, so easy to work with, especially in if there's any confined spaces on the job site. So this can be sprayed on, airless spray equipment, but also can be rolled on. I have a 3/4 inch nap roller here, so I'll put this roller in. Usually when I put a roller in, I want to get that roller nice and saturated with it. Those rollers can have a lot of, the fibers are clumped together and tight, so I want to make sure I got coating in there. So imagine that this is all set up, and now I'm going to apply. It stays on the roller. It's a nice consistency, so it stays on there. And then I'm going to generally start when you're damp, when you're applying the air barrier, start at the top of the wall, work my way down. It doesn't matter what direction you go. You want to make sure that you have it completely covered. So it does help to go from different directions. And with the material, you're going to roll it on and cover the surface completely.
And so for every 100 square feet, we're looking for 2.5 gallons? Is that correct?
Correct. On a smooth surface, exterior gypsum, even a plywood is pretty a smooth surface here. We're going to go 2.5 gallons per 100 square feet. I can check, one good way to check the coverage rate is actually with a wet mill gauge. You can put a wet mill gauge in here and see that you're going to be looking for 40 wet mills to actually apply the at.
So the 40 wet mills will equate to 20 dry mills once, of course, it's dry. So 200 square foot wall, that will cover it because it's a 5-gallon bucket with a dense glass gold or plywood surface. Now, if it's CMU block,
Yep.
it's going to take a little bit more.
Yeah,
maybe
one
about
5
3
gallon
gallons.
pail per 200 square feet. What's nice about the gray color, it's a dark color. It absorbs the heat from the sun, so the product dries quickly.
So I noticed that you completely avoided the red because it would have run, correct?
Yeah,
That's
we just
not
put
dry
that
yet.
down. I would end up picking it up in the roller. I didn't want to do that, so I just avoided coating over it.
Yeah.
So, and I went pretty heavy there, so it stays heavy on there.
And since it's an elastomeric, it does have some sealability around fasteners once you're putting in your exterior cladding on top of it.
Yeah, it's sealed. If there's a penetration screw nail through that, it's past the ASTM, that it's a self-sealing product. How'd that feel? Pretty easy? Not too difficult,
Pretty
right?
easy pretty easy to work with. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not hard to, it's not fighting you at all.
But guys, I mean, really, it's real simple. Everything that we went over in the classroom, I mean, that really explains it to you a lot more clearly, so you understand the importance of having a good air barrier in place. Thanks, guys, and thank you. Rooflines, make sure to like my videos and keep checking in with me. We'll keep the videos coming. Thanks.